Hey, we're going live. Let's talk about terrain and layouts. And that's at twitch.tv/Phoenix Gaming Space. All right, so today, I don't know how long we're going to be talking about it, but clearly we're going to talk about terrain layouts, right? Before we get into it, uh, yep, we're live. Cool. Boop, let's get off of that. All right, so before we get into it, let me take a look at this. I'm still making the switch over to the Twitch studio. So I'm still learning some of the ins and outs of this program. I don't know if I like it any better or any worse than uh, Streamlabs. Sorry, my brain was not ready. Um, been a rough couple of days here, right? So not that they've been hard or difficult, just long, tired. Awesome. So we're going to talk about terrain layouts. We're going to talk about why they're important. We're going to talk about how they kind of help balance the game, right? And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of having standardized layouts. We'll see how long this takes. I don't know. This could be a quick one. This could be a long one. It really just depends on you, the viewers, and what kind of interaction we get. And that's not what we needed. Hit the wrong button. But that's really what it is dependent on. So there we go. We're just last minuting a few things. So before we get started, some things I want to talk about. Um, Number one, obviously I've got the Teespring store. Plasma DACA makes me harder than Mega Armor. One of my favorite shirts on that store. Uh, it is teespring.com/Vorpal Gaming. I cannot change the address of my site, and I do not want to remake everything or export it or do the things I would need to do to kind of make that transition right now. So for now, it's gonna keep that, right? I am going to be changing and updating products. Honestly, I haven't set aside the time to do it yet. I apologize for that. That's on me. The other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to celebrate 100 subscribers on YouTube. I don't care if it's a big milestone or not. It is for me, so we're celebrating it a little bit. So we're going to give ourselves a round of applause. Yeah. Outside of that, I do have a lot of events coming up, so my stream schedule is going to be a little weird. My YouTube upload schedule is going to be a little bit weird. But a big thanks to all the supporters, the Franks, the Dans, the Matt Millers, and the other guys that have subscribed on Twitch. And then the real Donnie G, Captain Too and Lord Wellingstone, who are Patreons through YouTube. You guys have done a great job in providing me the support, and that does help me just kind of funnel things right back into the community. I've been able to improve the terrain every event I've done. I've been able to kind of dedicate time into learning how to run better events. Oh, give me a second. Boop. All right. So, that's most of what I really wanted to address. So, we're going to get into it. All right. So, this right here, this is our table. And let me see. Does it? Yeah, I'm about it. I'm about that. I love that markup, right? It's one of my favorite features of Twitch, the Twitch Studio, is that markup is built right in. And really, the holdup that's keeping me from shifting away from it to it completely is I have to reset all of my settings for all of my cameras. I don't know if it has an export feature from Streamlabs to this. We'll find out. Okay, so this right here, this is our 40K table, right? I don't know if you can see my cursor. Let's see. I don't even know if I can see me seeing my cursor. We're gonna doop doop. You can't. All right, cool. So this is my 40K table right here. Like I said, we're we're going to start with a short board, all right? And these are going to be not to scale. I'm not an artist, so just calm yourself. This gnarly, awesome pink color is going to be deployment zones, right? Boop. So if we assume, well, that's not at all. Boop. Not only was that not to scale, that wasn't even close. So this is going to be deployment zones. They don't have to be perfect. We just need a simulation. So this is going to be like an abandoned sanctuaries, tide of conviction, that type of board. These are some of my favorite boards. The distance between, right? So we'll just make mid-board pink also. And again, we're just going to ballpark it. All right, so the distance between here and here is still 12 inches, right? So it's 24 inches of dead space between the deployment zones. That's true for longboard or shortboard. So with terrain, right, what you want to do if you're making a table. So if I'm making a table and I'm going to play on this table, my goal for terrain is to make it so I can't. Let me get my brush and let's go to black for our markup color. My goal when I make terrain is I should not be able to camp here and shoot all the way across the table here without at least a -1 to hit penalty, a +1 to save modifier, or blocking line of sight. Okay? If you can sit in your deployment zone and shoot at your opponent's deployment zone with none of that stuff, that's generally a problem. There are going to be some exceptions. One of those exceptions is if you have a couple of lanes, but there's still plenty of space to hide, that's not bad. And we're going to start by talking about the GW layouts because they are an example of that, especially the layout for this table. I don't think there's a square feature, so we just have lines. Oh, there's a square feature. Heck yes. This is, man, this is the bee's knees. I'm a big dork, and this is awesome. Okay? All right, so if we, so the way GW sets up their table, this is going to shock everybody that's watching right now, right? They don't really have much of a standardized format. They just have some guidelines. I'm not even playing. Like I've talked to different judges, gotten different answers. It's just the way it is. There is probably a standardized guideline, and it's just one of those where the judges don't all know it. But the main thing is, all right, if this right here is roughly center board, you want it for this layout. It goes 3 inches and then 6 inches, and it's going to go something like this. All right. Again, these aren't going to be perfect, but then we go 3 inches and we go 6 inches and we go something like this. And these are 12 by 12 squares that are obscuring, okay? And then all we need to do is come down here and mirror. It's actually a pretty easy layout to replicate. And obviously, like I did not do this to scale or symmetrical at all, because you could tell that the terrain is kind of jank, like it's not centered where it should be. And that's okay. All right. Give me a second. Boop. Make sure this isn't. Maybe. Oh no. Okay. All right. So now what we have is there's another piece that kind of sits like this. And these are roughly like 5 by 7, right? And again, the exact measurements aren't necessarily important. What's important is we just get the kind of look and feel of it. And so I'm going to tell you straight up, this is my least favorite. I guess there's only two. but I don't like this one as much as I like the other one, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. And then we've got some woods, and I'm just going to kind of, actually, you know what? We should do a different color for the woods. Uh, so all the purple will be ruins, all the woods. Hey, you know what makes sense? Let's make it heckin' green, friend. Let's see if it shows up. It does. All right. So there's woods, and we're not gonna fill them all the way in. We're just gonna kind of put some squares in the corner where they would be. All right. All right. And this is close enough, right? This is about what the GW layout looks like. And there's nothing wrong with it. The shortboard, this is standard. If you go to tournaments, you're going to see this at least once. This isn't something that a lot of, I think, casual players use, has been my experience. Um, so let's say we're playing a mission like Abandoned Sanctuaries, right? So I don't know if you can see that. I should probably just change the size to the big fat one. There we go. So we've got oh, because I'm a goon. I'm not using the right thing. Boop. So we got an objective here. We've got one right about here. We've got one right about here. We've got one right about here. And we've got one right about here, right? So this is Abandoned Sanctuaries. Now, this is what I would consider an average layout. Is it perfect? No. Is there a perfect layout? No. But why is it an average layout, right? Well, the main thing that really stands out to me is if we play this game, we have this massive, straight lines are hard. We have this massive lane right here. Oh my gosh. All right, can we just, there we go. That helped. We have a massive lane right here, and there's an objective in it. And because of the way the terrain is set up, like there's only a little bit of space on these features that you can use to control the objective. So you basically have to be in that shooting lane to control any of these objectives in the middle, right? So if you're on the center objective, well, let's boop, 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 boop. If you're here, right, on the center objective, I can literally shoot at you from any other objective. So it's a very dangerous place to be. I have a line here, I have a line here, I have a line here, I have a line here. And there's nothing you can do about it. So if you want that middle objective, you're playing the trading game, right? Which isn't necessarily bad, but if you're playing against an army that can shoot, you're at a very distinct disadvantage. And I'm not even talking about once you incorporate the no pregame move rules and all the other stuff. I'm just talking about in general. If you want the center of the board, if you're playing against an army that shoots, you're at a big disadvantage. And that kind of sucks. But I get it. Like we can't make every table good for melee. We can't make every table good for shooting. So it's just one of those weird situations, right? It is what it is. We just make the best of it and we work with it. Now, the other thing is, right? It's real weird, but there's like a narrow lane. You can go here, right? And here. And that's obviously on both sides. Never mind, my arrows go through the terrain. I just suck at drawing with a mouse, and I don't have my drawing pad stylus yet. So we've got these massive shooting lanes here. We've got this massive one up the middle here. And not to mention, like, you can just sit from here and shoot all the way to here. So this shortboard layout, if you understand how to use terrain and how to kind of like bubble screen your chargers and stuff, is just a field day for shooting armies. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some ways you can kind of mitigate that with melee, but it's predicated around having extremely fast infantry that can breach these walls, right? Um, so with this layout specifically, the reason why jump pack troops are so good, quote unquote, in the meta. And that's the thing you got to remember is that so much of our quote unquote meta statistics are based on tournaments using this layout, especially if they come from Games Workshop. Half the games use this layout, right? But if you're running at a GW event and you know you're at a GW event, it's pretty smooth brain. You just line up dudes, and then if they move 12, they can leap to here, and then they can charge anywhere in here. All right. If you are like me and you play armies that are just kind of fast but aren't jump pack, like I play Drukari, right? And I play orcs, and orcs aren't super fast, but as my buddy Bailey says, they're deceptively quick, right? Shout out to Danklists. He does have a YouTube channel. It's just Danklists Wargaming. You can look him up. Super nice dude, and he knows his stuff pretty good. But I can put a unit of witches here, and then turn 2, I can advance them out, and I can charge. You know, so there's not a lot of thought that goes into using this terrain layout because of how it is. It's, do I have fast infantry that can breach the walls? If yes, I camp them next to the wall, and then next turn they run out and charge. Uh, when you use standardized layouts, it's not just this one, but when you use standardized layouts, it becomes you can game it a lot better, right? Because you know what to expect. Which is why, like, when I run tournaments, I try to do 2 to 3 standardized layouts, but I alternate on tables. So you might hit one layout, but then you might hit another layout, and you might hit a different layout. So you could play on 3 different tables. So you can't just like game for one table. You just play 3 different tables, and whatever happens, happens. Plus, it gives the players variety, but I'm digressing a little bit. All right, so that's the issue with this layout, right? One of them. The other big issue is this right here. Why are these in the corners? I mean, there is use and utility for them to be there, but there are so many better spots that they could be. At least 2 of them, right? Because, like, you could put one here and one here, and then have some -1 to cover up these shooting lanes, right? And then maybe even like one here, or even just move it up like this. Any one of those would be good. I am going to regret this, but we're going to see what that is. Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to be anything. Okay, so, like, them being in the corners is super weird. I'm sure there's a reason behind it. And again, it's not terrible. Like, it gives you some kind of protection from charges if you deep strike into there and then shoot out of the woods because they are difficult terrain. So it's one of those where it can help. There's nothing wrong with it, and it does fill those corners pretty well. It's just a weird interaction, right? So that is going to be our talk on that layout, right? Wow, that just cleared everything. That's fine. So actually that works out fine anyway. So now we're going to talk about their longboard layout. And we're going to talk about why I like this one a lot better, right? And again, these aren't going to be perfect. And this one's going to take me a little bit longer to draw because this one takes a little bit more effort to lay out. Boop. And oh, I already messed it up. I guess we're doing the reverse. We're going to make pink the terrain, right? So this one's like, that's not what I meant to do. All right. So this one is still, oh gosh. Again, we're eyeballing shit here. Like, this one is real weird compared to the other one. Boop. Boop. All right, so they're actually staggered. And then our middle ones, right, kind of sit like, oh God, why would I do this? All right, so our middle ones actually sit more like this. Uh, it is not nearly as bad as the first one we talked about, the shortboard one. And I'm going to talk about why, although it is a lot worse for certain armies. But I don't disagree with you that in terms of standardized layouts, these are not necessarily the best. But I also understand now that I have spent almost a year working for Games Workshop as a part time employee and working at their events, I definitely understand how they got to this point on how to make a layout, right? Um, because initially I was like, "Oh, this is stupid. I hate this." And then once I worked for them, I understood it. Nope, that's yeah, no, they do have these here, and again, these aren't perfect. Uh, but once I did a couple of events for them, I really understood how they got to this layout, and it's really just time. It's cost and time. Uh, because let's go back to our black. We're not going to worry about objective markers here. Uh, this is basically not what I meant to do, but that's okay. Uh, one terrain box, right? It's like a big ruins box. Each 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 one of these features is like half a box of terrain. So the money that they put into it is a lot lower, and the footprints are big, so they don't need as many, right? So it's really just about cost efficiency and trying to create as balanced of a board as they can for as cheap as they can and still use their own products. It's what it boils down to. Uh, but like I said, I don't disagree with you. It is a rough table. It is more rough for some and less rough for others. But here's what I like about it more than I like the other one is we do have this, right? But it has a -1. Now, arguably, there's a lot of armies out there that can ignore it, but those two are -1. So there is at least a hit roll penalty to shoot from deployment zone to deployment zone, right? You have a weird shooting lane here, but you have to be up right here. All right. So it's one of those where, yeah, you can, but you got to jump out of your deployment zone, get towards the front of the feature, and then you have this weird lane that can like hit this general area here, and then that's it, right? Everything they do on, and I should have touched on this on the last layout, but these are first floor blocking, these big squares. These little ones are not. They have windows, so when you touch into them, whatever you can see, you can shoot, right? But that's what I like more about this one is that the woods here and here make a lot more sense. The woods here, they're not like amazing, but they again at least make some sense because you can at least put a unit in it and have that -1 to hit penalty if somebody like jumps up to shoot you. So they tend to feel like they have more thought put into them. But what again are the downsides to this layout? Anybody in chat got any opinions on what they think the downsides are before I jump into it, or at least what I think they are? While you think it over, I'm gonna chug some water. To me, we run into the same downside we did with the other one. It equals jump pack troops, sit here, move, charge, right? The other big issue I see with it is this lane, like I said, is super weird. But if you can get here, you have a lot of board control. And this right here, this layout especially, is why ignore line of sight became so powerful when it did. Because if you've got, yeah, they do count as obscuring with at a Games Workshop event. But I don't disagree with you. Like these are obscuring ruins, at a GW event, but once you touch them, you just got line of sight of everything, and that's super fair. But it does keep you from being able to get shot from deployment zone to deployment zone unless something. Yes, it's just one floor high, but it's not the floors that matters. Rules as written, it's the height of the terrain feature, um, which I think it's like 4 or 5 inches. And at their peak, they are just at that terrain feature height. Uh, like they're usually so here. A lot of times when we build those tables for Games Workshop events, those tables, the feature kind of looks like this, right? It's just like a triangular ruin. And then this right here meets whatever the height requirement it is to just be obscuring. Like these are obscuring. You cannot shoot straight through from deployment zone to deployment zone if you go to a Games Workshop event, right? Now, this is not to say that if you go to like an RTT, they're going to have those rules. They might use that layout, but not use those rules, right? But like when I set up tables at the Chicago Open, those are obscuring. Um, but no, you're not wrong though, because again, once you touch here, you've got this whole firing lane here. Um, the other downside to this, right, is that, like I said, it does favor. Yep, there we go. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, it does favor ignore line of sight. So like when the big speedwog list came out that lasted all of like 2 weeks, that just spammed Rucka Truck squig buggies. They would just camp the squig buggies and then just shoot anywhere, right? Hey, what's up, buddy? Welcome, welcome. We're talking about terrain today. Yeah. So, the rocket truck squig buggies would just sit right there and just shoot, and then they'd use the jets to bum rush you and try to pop that first unit, right? For freebooters, like freebooters, they'd get that first unit killed, everything could get +1 to hit, and then the squig buggies would be hitting on fours with ignore line of sight. Uh, and it's weird because like I am an orc player first, and we did not survive that nerf competitively. And it wasn't even the nerf to the squig buggies, it was the nerf to the jets. Like the orc jets, and it's not even that they're good, it's just that they're underpointed. They're underpointed, and if I go first, I just get to throw so many dice that you're going to pick up a lot. And that's what it is. So this terrain layout favors jets, and it favors ignore line of sight stuff, which is why jets and ignore line of sight stuff are so prevalent in competitive lists. And then you couple that with it really kind of hurts shooting armies unless they're hyper mobile. And what do I mean by hyper mobile? Tau is a mobile army. I wouldn't necessarily call them hyper mobile because they only have one way to move, shoot, move, and that's a stratagem. And it's any battle suit, right? So in order for me to really get a good line of sight, and don't get me wrong, Tau can still do work. Like being able to shoot while they're engaged, they still get to do work. But basically, if I've got crisis suits here and you've got something here, but you have another unit here that you want to countercharge with, I can jump out and I can shoot, but I don't really have a way to get away from you outside of a stratagem. So this unit here is just going to countercharge, right? And that's how that's going to work. So if you're not hyper mobile, this is kind of punishing. And again, this is why we're seeing that the best armies in tournaments right now, specifically Games Workshop ones, are fast armies. This is why. This is why Harlequins are top dog in it right now, up until the massive nerf that they just got. This is why I'm not going to say Craft Worlds, they haven't competitively done great, but they are a very hard army to use. Exactly. And that's why Bombers got nerfed. Like, that's it. GW can't figure out how to balance planes, so they just keep getting nerfed. And you're exactly right, though. But that's why also NIDS. NIDS are one of those armies that's deceptively fast. Like, depending on the build, plus the Harpies are really fast and they can move everywhere. The mortal wounds don't hurt them. I'm not saying that that doesn't play into it at all, because it absolutely does. Um, like, being able to just spam an obscene amount of smites that just do a disgusting amount of mortal wounds is a big part of their shtick. But the Harpies, the hypermobile units, that's why those are all good, because if I want to, I can get from here to here, and then I can just have free range on anything I can see, right? And that's kind of where the game has evolved to over the course of this edition, starting really with the Drukari book, and it hasn't really shifted a ton. I know when Death Guard came out and Dark Angels came out, like they were pretty strong at the time, but because of codex creep, obviously that changes. But that's why comp armies are built the way they are. So we're going to talk about a layout that I like to use. Crisis suits are bonkers good. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know how much you play Tau. I don't know what Sept you play. Like, there's a lot that goes into that conversation. Um, a whole lot that goes into that conversation. And then let's get our deployment zones. So this is going to be a shortboard deployment, right? Boom. All right. So this is one that I use for shortboard. So I use the GW layouts because everybody knows them. They're very familiar with them. That's like their comfort food, right? So if I'm running a tournament and it's got 30 tables on it, I'll do 3 different layouts and they just alternate. Not 30 tables, 30 players, 15 tables. There we go. I have not run a 30 table tournament for myself. I have for Games Workshop, but not for me. So if I'm running a 15 player tournament and I get, oh my gosh, the numbers are beating my ass today. If I run a 30 player tournament and have 15 tables, we got there, right? This is one of the layouts I will use. And again, we're just kind of, no, that's not good. That's no bueno por la caca, senor. Uh, that's also way off. Let me put a center line in here so I can have a better reference point. Whoop. And again, doesn't have to be perfect, but if it's way off, it's not going to look right. All right, so I have a big footprint here in the middle, and it's centered, and it's 3 inches from the center, right? And then I have a little footprint here in the deployment zone. And there is space. Just keep in mind, these are not to scale. There is space. Oh, no. My crooked line. Why would I do this? All right. So, and then there's one here. And I'm not going to draw the whole thing out, but you guys get the idea. And then there's one here, one here, one here. And all these corners get one. And this one, I've had a lot of positive feedback from the community on. And this is not 100% original. I just looked at another standardized format and just kind of tweaked it to fit my needs, right? And then we have a woods that kind of sits here. And then we'll do red for armor container. And then I have an armor container that kind of sits here, right? And there might be some overlap here. And again, it gets the point across. Now, for this table, these are right here, and this is actually how the features are set up, right? Here, and then here. Boop, boop. So those ones specifically are first floor blocking, right? So let's change it to blue. These are not first floor blocking. So they have windows. Now everything is obscuring. But I will say that these right here, if you're touched into them, whatever you can see, you can shoot. But then there is space behind them so that if you don't want to touch the footprint, you can hide your units behind it. All right. So again, this isn't a perfect layout. I'm not over here going, ha ha ha, I'm better than Games Workshop. It has its drawbacks. Excuse me. But this is a solid layout. I've gotten really good feedback from the community. All right, so this is how it would work. So because we have a whole bunch of different colors on here, we're going to add one more. Our markup is going to be orange now. So again, let's take our abandoned sanctuaries, right? And these little orange lines are just going to be about where objectives would be. The objective in the middle, you can actually stand here or here because you'd be right inside the wall and control it. So you're not just getting shot off the table for controlling the objective in the middle of the board, right? You don't have this massive lane here where everything's just going to shoot you if you control it. But if I'm over here, right, I can shoot here. If I'm over here, I can shoot here. But you're still getting the benefits of cover. So you're not, again, just getting shot off the table. But armies that can shoot still have good shooting lanes. Let's get rid of some of these. Oh, no. Boop. Right? Because if I'm in this feature here, I can see here and then here. Like that's my firing arc. And depending on where I'm at in that feature is going to change that arc a little bit. Like if I'm closer to the corner here, I've got an arc into the feature. And this black is about what the wall would look like. So I've got an arc into the feature and then obviously here. So I've got a big firing lane, and then I can also just shoot all the way across the table here if I've got range. So there are good lanes in this for shooting armies, but then there's big features to block line of sight so that if you are playing a melee army, you're not just picking up models turn one. You have places to hide, and you have things that you can do. Oh, we did it again. You know, so again, like if I'm playing a melee army, I can move up here and kind of hide here. I can move here, don't touch the footprint, and hide here. And then if you're not a hypermobile army, I don't have to worry about you jumping to here and then just shooting me off the table. I can bounce into the woods and at least get a -1 to hit. I can attempt to advance to see if I can get behind the armor containers, right? You know, so I have options. I don't have to constantly make the same decisions. And then, you know, you can sit on this objective in your backfield and you don't have to worry about getting shot off the table. But if somebody gets into your backfield, they're probably going away, right? We don't have this big deployment zone to deployment zone gap. But we have ways, like I said, to kind of get around. Or if you have deep strikers, they can come in. And if they're a shooting unit, they can shoot at it. If they're a charging unit, you're at the mercy of a 9-inch charge. Is it a perfect layout? No. Does it have its drawbacks? Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the drawbacks. If anybody's got some ideas, I'd love to see them in chat. But let's talk about some of the drawbacks. Here's what I think are, right? One of the main drawbacks is that if you're in this feature and I'm in this feature, guess what? That's a big, nasty shooting lane. The other drawback is that it's very tight. This is a 6-inch gap. And it's not even a 6-inch, it's just under, so that you can control the objective from inside the feature, right? So if you have bigger models, there's a good chance that you're going to struggle to kind of maneuver through the board a little bit. And I'm going to have to move some terrain around to help you be able to kind of position your models. Like if you play knights, I'm going to be moving stuff for you. That's just the nature of the beast. Um, and I 100% get that, right? Uh, that is another big one. The other one is that like there are some just like big lanes like here and here, right? Like these are massive. There's nothing through them. So again, if you're playing against a mobile army, like my second army is Drukari, I can get here real quick. And if I have like a Ravager, uh, I just have massive lanes. It's not just there's nothing to really break that up. So it's really solid for short board. It's okay for like a quarters deployment. Obviously, it's actually I don't think I've ever tried a longboard on it. If I were going to do a longboard on it, I'd probably shift this one over a hair and shift this one over a hair, or maybe angle them, and then just try to leave everything else as best I could and see how that goes. Because again, when I'm running tournaments, I'm usually one of two or three people. Like it's usually me and one other guy, and we're resetting tables, right? So my goal is to, when I design them, I'm like, okay, rounds 1 and 2 are going to use the same terrain layout. We'll take a lunch break at round 2, and then during lunch break, I'm going to just reset tables. And that gives me time to reset them, but I want to tweak and move as little as possible. I don't want to have to go through and reset tables. When I first started running events, I didn't use any standardized layouts. I just used like I just used whatever I had, right? I used to run a store and it was just whatever I had hanging out at the store, and it was really cool because nobody knew what to expect on the tables. You couldn't really game the system, right? But at the same time, I was exhausted by the end of it because I'm constantly resetting tables. If I had an odd number, I had to play ringer so that I didn't have somebody at the event just sitting there doing nothing. So it was just like exhausting. Um, so now that I've kind of evolved or developed some standardized layouts, that's helped expedite my process. And so now my goal is to just use more than one so that, again, players are getting a variety of terrain at my events. And two, I had it and I lost it. Let me get some water. Uh, Variety of terrain and just takes some of the work out for me. All right. We're going to talk about one more, I think. And oh, I guess I can just. And I've only played this one on like a data scry salvage or abandoned sanctuaries. Not abandoned sanctuaries. Conversion. There we go. And so I guess we're gonna have orange deployment zones now. That's what we're doing, guys. So this would be data scry salvage, right? So we'll go ahead and throw some objectives down. We'll make the objectives. Let's make them red this time. So that one's like here. Oh God. Yep. So we'll have one like here, and then there's one about here, and then there's one about here, and then there's one about here, right? And then we have one in the deployment zone and one into the deployment zone. And this is this is a layout that I am testing right now. So again, if you're curious and you want to know more about it, you can hit me up. Actually, let's do this. I think I have it pulled up. Nope. Let's pull it up real quick. Sorry, your screen's going to change. We're going to open up Discord. I'm going to shoot a Discord link, or at least get you my username, and then if you guys have questions, we will. You have a way to get a hold of me. As soon as I remember how to see my information. Hey, there I am. Boop. boop. There. So now, if you have questions, bam, you can ask me. And then in addition, right? And again, like I am not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to Discord. So struggle with me here for a minute. Copy link. There we go. And if you are interested, I have just a Phoenix Gaming Discord channel. You are welcome to enter into it and jump into it. The one thing I will say is be respectful, be mindful. I'm all for competitive play, and I'm all for a little friendly ribbing and trash talking, but I will not tolerate other players being derogatory, mean, or rude for no reason, and I will shut you down immediately. Um, it's just one of those where I don't want a toxic, negative atmosphere. I just want guys who want to, or girls, people who want to play and have fun and be friendly. That's what I want. All right. So if you got questions about any of these layouts, that's how you can get a hold of me. Feel free. All right. So for the terrain, let's go back to our favorite purple color. So this one's going to be a little harder. Again, because A, it's a very experimental layout. B, I don't have my reference picture in front of me. Let's actually, maybe I do. Before I do that, right? Let's pull it over here. Bum, bum, bum. There's nothing really crazy in here. It's all just 40K and my family, but I don't want to post pictures of my kids on the internet because I'm kind of a weirdo like that. All right, there we go. Copy. Can I actually? Yeah, let's do this. Boop, boop. All right, so I know this looks weird, right? Can I rotate this? Probably not through that, but that's okay. So it's one of those where we've got like some weird stuff going on here, right? And I'll actually let's just erase the markups. So this one right here, I think we actually played it might have been Data Scry. Yeah, because like one of the deployment zones was we need red. One of the like there we go. That was my deployment zone. That was my opponent's deployment zone, right? And we had an objective in the middle. And then it was like, boop. Did we have an objective? No. Yeah. So this wasn't Data Scry Salvage. This was like Conversion or Death and Zeal, right? And it was the one that had the 9-inch no deployments, I believe. But okay, so now what we'll do is we'll switch colors so I can kind of tag what everything is. So orange, these are basically right here. All this foam is barricades, right? So they give light cover if you draw line of sight lines within 3 inches, blah, 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 blah. So they basically work like armor containers that you can't land on. So your infantry can't move through them. The only way you can get over them is if you fly. And you can't land on them. And obviously, if you charge, you have to account for the vertical distance if you fly, so you can't charge through them either. Now, there are some exceptions to that, probably, because I don't remember how the Harlequin stuff is worded. This was an interesting table to play on, because again, we have some big shooting lanes, right? This is a big, fat shooting lane. But there's a lot of nooks and crannies in this. And I think, honestly, if I remember right, and I'm not going to dig through the pictures right now, but if I remember right, one of these pieces actually ended up going like this, just so we had another nook that we could hide in and block some of this shooting off through the middle. Like there was still a lane in the middle, but you had like little terrain features you could leapfrog on. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I played my orcs on it. I played against a Craft Worlds army on it. I play Evil Sons right now. I am a big Death Skulls guy, but I've been kind of just futzing around with Evil Sons. And I had this one specific build I was trying to test out, and we just kind of came up with this layout while we played it, right? Oh, you know what? This right here, you see this gray square on the board? We just treated that as the footprint for the ruin. Yep, yep. I'm remembering now. And it was this piece specifically that I'm erasing that got moved. That piece right there got moved towards the center where I drew these orange lines already. So this piece right here went to here. And like I said, it was cool. He played Craft World, I played Orcs, and really, like, he had a fairly shooting army, especially compared to mine. Um, I was able to bait him into some bad positioning, and that's really what did it. Um, like, I had some Def Dreads, I advanced them out. Oh, let's not use the same color for markups. I guess we can go to black, right? Yeah. And we can just erase this shooting lane. Whoop, whoop. All right. So I had some Def Dreads. I advanced them up here. And then I had a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of got into this area. Like, I think I put some Coptas down there because they fly, right? Uh, and then my battle wagon was over on this side, and it kind of came up. And then I had a few other things kind of come up here. And then I just left some grots back here and some stuff over here, right? Nothing major. The main thing was I wanted him to overextend because Eldar can't flood the table the way that orcs can, right? So I wanted him to overextend. I wanted him to commit to killing my Death Dreads because the bulk of his high damage output shooting was Fire Dragon, so it was relatively close range. So if he was close enough to tag my Death Dreads with his Fire Dragons, that meant that they were going to be close enough for the counter charge. And he did not disappoint, right? Uh, his Avatar of Cain came walking out here, and then Fire Dragons came up, killed my Death Dreads, but I just had Squig Hogs, and I forget what else. Right, bikes, right behind, right? And so I just charged him. I turned two, declared my Wa, tied all that up, and it was just a brutal massacre. His his Avatar of Cain killed my battle wagon, big shock. Uh, but I had 10 Mega Knobs pile out, and actually I had already disembarked them before I put the battle wagon up. My Mega Knobs were just sitting right here. He came up, killed my battle wagon. Mega Knobs came in, and they gave that Avatar of Cain the poopy duty. It's one of those where I just drowned them in buckets of dice, and I think I spent the 2 CP to add one to their damage, so all my D3s were just regular D3s because I was running dub kill saws, and they were 5 attacks each, so it was just 50 attacks, and it was just like, hey, can't make them all, you know? So it was one of those where there were good shooting lanes, there were good charging lanes. It does hamper. This layout does benefit armies that fly a little bit more than some of the other ones we've talked about because of everything being non-breachable outside of like 2 features. But it also provides, like I said, some shooting lanes. There's a lot of line of sight blocking. So it's just an interesting layout. I'm not running it, but Phoenix Gaming is running a Highlander tournament at the end of this month, and I'm going to talk to the judge and see if he wants to test run it on a table or two. And then we can get feedback from the players. Because again, this is how I kind of do things. I find my off meta events, I test run terrain. If I get good feedback, then I start implementing it in my more meta events. And that's where the Highlanders and then like my weird like faction based team tournaments and stuff. That's where they all come into play. in terms of like from an organizational standpoint. They give players something fun that they get to do and have fun with. Like Highlander's super fun. The team tournament's super fun because the team tournament, everybody has to share a faction keyword. So you can't just be like, I'm going to cherry pick the best of this. Like if you bring knights, everybody has to play knights. So only one person gets to bring the hyper meta knights list because you can't repeat sub factions and stuff. And I use those to kind of be a testing bed for some of my weird or zany ideas. Like, oh, well, here's an off meta event. I'm not going to be drawing like hyper competitive people, but I'm going to get like a good mix of competitive and casual players so I can get feedback from both sides. And then when I play them at events for the first time, I always put them at the middle tables. So like if I talk to the TO and he's like, "Yeah, we can do this," right? Uh he's going to be like, if we've got 15 tables, we're going to put it on table like 6, 7, or 8, or maybe we'll do 6 and 8. So again, there's a good chance we get both competitive and casual players on it, but we're not putting it on the top table or the top 3 tables so people can't be like, oh, well, this stupid terrain cost me the game. And it's just trying to prevent some of those feel bads. So, whoop. I had a beep. Okay, nothing big. All right, so now that we've covered all of that and we've talked about some terrain layouts, I think we're probably going to wrap up unless we have some questions. I wanted to talk about some of my philosophies on how I build tables, which I did at the very beginning. And, I might actually just jump back to that real quick. Boop. And we'll close on that. And then again, if you have questions, ask me. If you need to get a hold of me, there's some Discord information right there in the chat. And then all you fine folks have a way to get a hold of me. All right, so main thing is we don't want to be able to shoot from deployment zone to deployment zone, right? Without at least a -1 or a +1 to save. So a -1 to hit or a +1 to save, and we don't want a lot of that, right? We want to mitigate that because again, like if I put a feature here that blocks here, right? But then I put a feature here that blocks here, and then I put one here, and then I put one here, and we just kind of do that, right? Like I might have some lanes. Like this would be way too much. Unless there was like one here, one here, one here. So if you have a couple little lanes, that's not the end of the world, but you don't want a lot. And I've seen it. I've seen some tables that are just atrocious, right? And there's no terrain, and it's just like, well, if I have a gun, I win. Like if I'm here and I can shoot, if my firing arc is this, and there's nothing at all in between there, that's not good. That's too much. But if my firing arc is like this, and even if it's on both sides of the board, right? But there's nothing in between here, that's a big improvement. So these are things to keep in mind when you guys are building your tables. It helps balance the game a little bit because remember, like the way I try to kind of talk about it to people when I'm teaching them how to build terrain tables and stuff for tournaments. Like there's a guy I know who's just now getting into running events. He lives about an hour and a half from me, and he's come to my events and he was like, "Man, yours are super fun. I really like what you're doing. What can I do to kind of get better?" And I was like, "Well, the main thing is, do you have good terrain? And if you don't, do you just improve it every time?" Because that's what your players are going to notice. Do they notice that you're improving your terrain? Because if they come 2 or 3 times and nothing's changed and they don't like what they're seeing, that's when you're going to start losing people, right? So, that being said, hope everybody got some good information. wanted to talk about terrain today. I don't remember what I had on deck, and that's kind of how we ended up talking about terrain. And I might not have even had anything on deck because this whole week has just been crazy. I've been grinding a lot of work for Games Workshop. I'm about halfway through 40 boxes of terrain that I have to get built and painted. So we're making progress there. I will be at Adepticon running the Kill Team event. So if any of you are at Adepticon, I'll see you there. I will be the Kill Team judge. I'll probably have a big bright yellow neon shirt on. Come say hi, man. If I can, I'll wear my hat so I'm easier to find. I just got to make sure it's okay because of the whole like the Games Workshop can get a little bit picky about me promoting my brand while working their events, and that's totally understandable. I don't think it'll be an issue because I'm not selling anything. It's just social media, and as long as I'm not giving anything away. Like if I wear a hat, I don't think it's going to be a problem. If I'm giving away like swag bags or stickers or something, then we have an issue. But I need to double check it. But again, if you're at Adepticon, come say hi. I'll be running the Kill Team event, and judge a shirt, Phoenix Gaming hat. Awesome, guys. Thank you.